Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, we are going to talk about design tools. And since there are so many of them, which one should you pick? Let's find out. So guys, I'm not sure about you, but I really feel this pressure of all these new tools that are coming out, all these new design tools that are coming out. There's so many of them actually. And to keep up with them, it's like a daunting task. And if it's daunting for me, I think it's really daunting for people who are just starting out, especially the beginners. So many softwares, which one to pick, which one is the best. I've tried almost all of them, and over the past 5 years in my design careers, only a few of them have served me well. So let's find out which one are those, and I'll be discussing and I'll be giving you my verdict that which one should you pick as well, and hopefully that will be really helpful for you. So before we jump into finding out what are the different tools that are available as of now, we first need to understand that every tool that we use as a designer is dependent on some sort of a design process. Now that design process, maybe it's followed by your company, maybe you follow it as a freelancer or maybe as an individual. But there is a design process that you need to follow, and these tools fit in the different areas of the design process. So let's first quickly jump and figure out what exactly is the design process, and then I can give you the overview of all the tools that are available. Here you see a typical design process, which I have shown here. So any design process actually starts with product inception or research, where you're getting some requirements, you're getting this requirement maybe from your product managers or other stakeholders. And at this particular moment, you're trying to do a lot of research, you're going back and forth and understanding the requirement. And this is basically the first step, and it varies differently from different companies. There are a lot of tools that help to do this as well, but we're not going to cover that. The next stage is when you have like a slightly better idea around what type of product you're going to build. The next stage is basically creating some wireframes and user flows. So basically this step helps you to visualize what kind of user journey is going to be there for that particular product, and is also used in the initial state to finalize and refine the product thinking and the exact product when you are getting started with the product. So wireframing and user flows are basically something that you design. This is very rough actually at this stage, because you still have not finalized, you're still going back and forth with stakeholders, but at this stage you're trying to finalize the user journey. Now there are a lot of tools that does this part again separately, like just doing user flows and wireframing, but I think the tools that are available for visual design, like the final screens, can also be easily used for wireframing and user flows, so I don't think you need any separate tools here. The next stage is basically once you have decided what product to build, you come to visual design part where you're designing the screens and the interactions. And this is the final sort of a thing that you are going to deliver. So visual design is a state where you actually require these UI tools. The next stage is basically interaction design and prototyping. Most of the time when going with a new feature, you try to do user testing. You want to see how the prototypes are working. You want to prototype it so that you can show it to users, you can show it to stakeholders, and you can also show it to developers so that they understand how the screens are going to behave. So interaction design and prototyping is again a really major part of any UX design flow. And the last step is mostly developer handoffs, where you basically whatever you have designed, you need to give it to developer in a consumable format. So there are tools that helps in developer handoffs as well. So overall, we are going to follow this typical UX product cycle, and I'm going to tell you the products that are available, the tools that are available for this process. And in this screen, actually, if you see the initial set till wireframing, it's a low fidelity one, and the visual design part onward, it's where you design high fidelity screens. Before we move forward, let me quickly clarify these two terms. What exactly is a prototype and what exactly is a fidelity? So prototype is basically simulation or a sample version of the final product, which is used for basically testing prior to launch. So you are simulating the experience of the app or the website that you're designing. Fidelity is basically how close you want your mock to feel to the real product. So the more close, the more polished you want your mock to be, it's a higher fidelity one. The more rough you want it to be, it will be the low fidelity one. Okay. So cool. So let's start with the process here, we will first discuss UI design. So for the UI design process, we have a couple of tools available to us. I'll quickly explain to you these tools. One is Sketch, one is Figma, Adobe XD, and InVision. So now, out of all these four tools, Sketch is actually the primary ones, as actually the major giant in this industry. Sketch has actually started the entire evolution around the prototyping tool. So Sketch has been around for a really long time, and all the other apps have been like built from inspiration of Sketch itself. But yeah, there are a lot of tools available now. So Sketch, the point to note is Sketch is actually a paid tool. You have to pay $99 a year to get this tool. Like for a year, you'll get all the updates. After that, if you want the updates, you can keep that version. But if you want the updates again, you have to renew the license, and it charges around $79 per year for the renewal. Then you have Figma. Figma is a really popular tool these days right now, and it's growing in popularity. The best part about Figma is real-time collaboration, and it's a free tool. So what does we mean by that? So real-time collaboration is basically you can collaborate with other people and you can see what they're doing on real-time. Actually, you don't have to send files here and there. You can just quickly send the entire thing that you're working, share the entire thing that you're working with different privileges or accesses, and you can quickly collaborate real-time. The other bit is Figma is also free. So Figma is free for individuals like up to 3 projects, but if you have like a higher team, you can go for a higher version. So you can buy the paid, but starting it's free. And the third thing is it's platform agnostic. Unlike Sketch, which is only for Mac, Figma is a web browser based tool, and you can basically use it either on Windows or on Mac as well, right? The third is XD, Adobe XD. It's a product by Adobe. It's also a really nice tool, and it's also platform agnostic. But the real-time collaboration bit is not as great as Figma. We'll see how it combines with other tools from the prototyping side and all, and then I'll try to recommend which one is the best. But yeah, XD is also a great tool. It's by Adobe, and if you see all these three, Adobe XD, Figma, and Sketch are really similar in the interface. Just that they have like a little bits and pieces of nuances that are different in each of these, which makes them slightly different, but the learning curve is more or less same. The fourth tool actually is InVision Studio, which is launched by InVision. I won't recommend it much because InVision has lagged behind. I think Sketch, Figma, and XD have moved it way beyond. They tried to do a lot of things in one place, and they were not able to do a lot of things correctly. I've used it, I feel it like not that great according to me. But yeah, InVision Studio is also something there. But when you have like a free tool like Figma and XD, I don't think I can recommend XD. Sorry, I can recommend Studio, InVision Studio. So we're not going to be talking about Studio here, but we'll be talking about these three major players, which is Sketch, Figma, and XD. Okay, so UI design wise, these are the three main tools. Next, move on to the prototype bit. And don't worry, I'll give you the final verdict, which one fits well in your workflow. But let me first quickly summarize which are the tools that I use for everything else. The next come prototyping. So as I mentioned, prototyping is something where you want to mimic your final product. It's mostly like clickable states where basically you can give it to the users and you can let them click through different states and you can simulate an experience around how the app or the website is going to behave. Now there are different fidelity around it, like if you want to build like something really low where you want to just explain the flow, or you want to build something really high where you can just load it on a device and give it to them and the users will not able to distinguish between a real app or your mock. So that's called something high fidelity. So first talk about Sketch. So Sketch has integrated prototyping in it. So it's called native prototyping. So you can basically the screens that you design, you can link them through the prototyping tool that they have, and natively you can make flows inside it. So it does have a native prototyping, but I would say it's at something around medium fidelity. Okay, then you have XD. So XD also have prototyping inbuilt to it, but again it's slightly better than Sketch, but again it's also a medium level fidelity prototyping tool. Then you also have Figma. Figma is again better than both Sketch and XD. But then again, it also lets you do a certain number of things. I'm sure in future they are going to improve it. But currently, it's also from very basic to a medium level only, but still better than XD and Sketch. So all of these have native prototyping. Then comes Marvel app. So Marvel app is a separate tool that is used for prototyping. So what it does is it connects with XD, Figma, and Sketch via plugin, and then you can directly upload your screens into Marvel. And what Marvel does is basically converts your artboards into image, and then you can create hotspots around it. Marvel has a more number of options, so you can do a lot of other things that are available in a typical app, like other type of interactions for bottom shapes, for pop-up modals. So you can do it much more better way in Marvel. So it gels really well with the workflow. If you have any of these software, it gels really well with Marvel. Um, but Marvel is free only for one project, and beyond that you have to pay per project basis. The next tool that comes for prototyping, which from which you can create like really high fidelity prototypes, is called Principle for Mac. Principle for Mac is a Mac only tool, unfortunately, but it combines really well with Sketch and Figma. And if you don't know what Principle can do, basically it creates a prototype that you can load on your device, and users can interact and control states. And you can do a lot of things. It's like a small mini version of After Effects, but just that it creates an interactive prototype out of it. If you're not sure what you can do with Principle for Mac, you should definitely check out my video. It should be coming somewhere on the top, the card for that, where I designed Tinder swipe interaction in Principle. But yeah, so Principle creates like a really high fidelity mocks, where you can just give it to users, and sometimes they won't be able to distinguish between a real or the Principle prototype. So you can definitely create a really high mock around it. But again, it's also a paid tool. It's only for Mac and only integrates with Sketch and Figma for now. It costs around $129 to have for a year, and then again, for if you want more updates, you still have to renew the license. The licensing is around $70-80, but yeah, for a year it is like that. You also have something called Framer for prototyping, Framer X. So I'll link it down actually, all these things below. But Framer is obviously higher fidelity, not as high as Principle because it has a lot of other things as well, and connects directly with Sketch and Figma. But it's still a very high prototyping tool. You can have like scrolls, paginations, you could have button states, and a lot of other things into it as well. But Framer X is free for one project, and I think beyond that you need to still purchase it. So these are the tools that are available for prototyping. The final stage comes in like developer handoff. So what exactly is developer handoff is basically once you have designed everything, you need to give it to your developers, and they need to get it in some consumable form. So if they're designing iOS, they need assets in PDFs. If they're designing in Android, they need 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x assets, right? They need an SVG, PNG, and they also need to understand the dimensions in which they want to design, whether it's in DP, SP, or points, right? So all these things are done through developer handoffs. Now, if you talk about developer handoffs, Sketch has a developer handoff, but for that, inbuilt developer handoff, but for that you need to buy the team license for Sketch. Again, it's paid $9 per contributor. So you need to get their team's version for getting that handoff bit. XD has it inbuilt. So if you're on the free plan, you can just share the file, and again it will be available for the developers to figure it out, whatever they need in assets. Figma also has it inbuilt. If you share a file directly with developer, they have a tab which called developer assets, and you can basically click and choose between what type of assets they want, what is the dimension, everything you can share with your developers, and they can find it out. So yeah, so it's really cool that they have all these things have native ones, but for Sketch again you have to buy the team one. The next bit is Zeppelin in this one. So Zeppelin is actually a really powerful tool which just do developer handoffs. It integrates with Sketch, Figma, and XD very well, and then you can just push up from your files, and it automatically gets uploaded in Zeppelin. Now Zeppelin does a lot of other cool things that these native developer handoff tools does not do. And the other bit that is very good in Zeppelin is that you have to pay per project. You don't have to pay like per user. Whereas in Figma, Sketch, and XD, when you go like do the paid plans, you have to pay by per user contributor. Whereas in Zeppelin, you have to pay by project. So one project is free. After that, you have to buy like for 3, you have again buy separate license. For 5 projects, you have a separate license. But in each project, you can have like infinite number of users and infinite number of screens. So in that way, Zeppelin becomes like really affordable solution. The other bit is that Zeppelin is quite clean and evolved in that manner. So I usually prefer Zeppelin when I'm communicating with developers. And again, it's platform agnostic. You could have like you could just send the web link and they can still be able to find out. So it's slightly more matured in handoffs. But if you don't want to use it, that's perfectly fine. If you're using Figma, then you can just send out the Figma file actually. These are the basic tools that we have. I also want to mention a few other tools. For example, Flinto and Protopie, which are also used for your interactions. But I'm not going to recommend them because other tools are going to do the same thing. So personally, for the past 5.5 years, I've been using a combo of Sketch, Principle, Zeppelin, and Marvel. So Marvel app is something which I create the initial flows and send it to the stakeholders when I just do a very rough wireframing and mockups. Um, After that, I design everything in Sketch, like a really high fidelity one, and the basic prototyping also I can do in there. Then very high level interactions are done in Principle, and after everything is done, I give that design, screen designs, the developer handoff in Zeppelin because as I told you, it's much better than the native ones, and the plans are really better. So these 4 have served me like really well. But if you're someone who is just coming out of college, I would recommend you to go with Figma. So Figma is catching up with in all the direction. It has inbuilt prototyping, it has real-time collaboration, it has developer handoffs inbuilt, right? So it's gonna get matured really fast, and the plugin eco base is also really good. I use Sketch because Sketch has been around for quite some time. We have been using Sketch for a really long time, and Sketch has like a really robust ecosystem of plugins. It also has a native app on Mac, so it takes full advantage of your Mac. So it runs really smooth, buttery smooth, and you could have like thousands of pages and files and artboards. It still won't budge. So for those particular reasons, we are using Sketch. But if you're someone who is just starting up, and if you don't have that high of a budget to use, and maybe you are on Windows and all, you should definitely start with Figma. I'm not recommending XD as of now because I think that as a designer, you should also be really good in interaction. And for that particular reason, if you're on Mac, you need Principle to do those interactions. So Figma integrates really well with Principle, right? So even in future, when you switch to a Mac and you have this interactive tool, it'll be very easy for you to understand these two tools because they gel very well. And I also think that Figma community is growing really faster than XD. So on and on, I will recommend you to use Figma. If you're just new, someone starting really new, you should start with Figma. You should try out Marvel and Zeppelin, the free versions of all of them. But Figma is the way to go for you. If you're someone who has a Mac who can afford Sketch, like $99 there, and for the team version, then I would recommend you to go with Sketch plus Principle combo. If you have a Mac and you can afford, let's say, $129 for Principle, then you should definitely get Principle because it just ups your game a lot, right? So final verdict, starting out, stick with Figma. It's gonna be really awesome. And if you have like a little bit of to spend, then you can definitely start to get Principle actually to create the high fidelity mocks. It'll help you in future. So guys, this was my verdict. Let me know what you think. And all the tools that I have mentioned here, if you feel like I need to explain, you want an explanation around any of the tools, for example, Sketch versus Figma, Figma versus XD, since I have used all of them, and if you want to understand more, for example, Principle versus After Effects, but After Effects is not a prototyping tool, but anyway, if you want to understand any more details around it, just let me know in the comment, and in the next video, I'll mostly talk about those as well, okay? So guys, this was Thank you for your time. This was my video, and do subscribe. It really helps spread the word, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.